Before we step into tonight's story, before the quiet begins to speak and the ordinary slowly starts to unravel, take just a second to do something small that helps this channel continue bringing stories like this to life. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel, press the like button, and turn on the notification bell, so you never miss a story when it arrives. Every click you make may seem small, but to this channel, it means everything. Because every single interaction supports the stories we share here. Stories that linger long after the video ends, stories that stay with you in that quiet moment before sleep. Stories that remind us how fragile life can really be. Tonight's story isn't filled with monsters, ghosts, or supernatural shadows. Instead, it's something far more unsettling. It's about the quiet ways life can change. The moments that appear completely ordinary at first. The kinds of moments we experience every day without thinking twice. But sometimes those simple moments are the very ones that slowly reshape everything. A look. A silence. A door left slightly open. Small things. Almost invisible things. Yet sometimes those tiny details are the first signs that something in your life, something you trusted completely, is beginning to fracture. Tonight's story is about that kind of moment. A moment that seemed harmless. A moment that looked like any other Saturday evening. But by the time the night was over, nothing would ever feel the same again. So dim the lights around you. Get comfortable. Maybe grab a drink. And settle in. Because if you stay with me until the end of this story, you might find yourself thinking differently about the quiet moments in your own life. And the doors you never thought to open. It was supposed to be an ordinary Saturday. Nothing dramatic. Nothing memorable. Just the kind of evening that slips quietly into the background of your life. The kind you barely remember a few days later. Those in-between evenings. The ones that sit somewhere between responsibility and relaxation. The week had finally released its grip. The rush of work was over. And Sunday still felt distant enough that tomorrow's responsibilities hadn't begun whispering yet. The house felt calm. Too calm. At first, it seemed peaceful. But sometimes silence isn't the comforting kind. Sometimes silence feels staged, almost rehearsed, like the world is holding its breath. I had just finished tidying the house. Laundry folded carefully, stacked in perfect lines across the living room chair. Not because it had to be done that way, but because order has a strange way of making us feel safer. As if neat stacks and clean surfaces could somehow keep chaos away. The dining table stood prepared for dinner. Plates placed neatly. Glasses waiting quietly. The chairs pushed in perfectly. But no one was sitting there yet. The house was waiting. And somehow, it felt like the house knew something I didn't. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a cup of tea. The kettle had just finished boiling, sending soft curls of steam upward into the air. The gentle clink of porcelain echoed louder than it should have. Strange how certain sounds become louder when everything else disappears. I carried the tea to the living room and slowly lowered myself into the sofa. The cushions wrapped around me in that familiar way they always had. The way furniture does when it has memorized your weight over time. It should have felt comforting. Routine. But something about that moment felt different. The refrigerator hummed quietly in the background. Its steady vibration almost resembling a slow heartbeat. Steady. Rhythmic. Unchanging. From the kitchen, I could hear him moving around. Soft footsteps. The occasional clatter of utensils. And then there was the humming. A quiet melody drifting through the room. But it wasn't a song I recognized. Not one he usually sang. The tune sounded incomplete. Broken, almost like someone humming without realizing it. Like his mind wasn't really present. His body was there in the kitchen. But his thoughts seemed somewhere else entirely. The smell of dinner slowly filled the air. Garlic sizzling. Fresh herbs warming. Something slightly sweet, maybe caramelized onions. Once upon a time, that smell meant comfort. It meant home. But tonight, it felt like a warning. The kids were out with friends. Normally the house would be alive with their energy. Their laughter bouncing down the hallway. Footsteps racing up and down the stairs. Doors opening. Music playing too loudly from upstairs rooms. But tonight, none of that existed. The silence pressed against the walls. Heavy. Almost physical. It settled in the corners of the house like fog. For a moment, Just a moment. I allowed myself to believe everything was perfectly fine. After all, nothing had actually happened. No arguments. No raised voices. No broken dishes. No slammed doors. Everything looked exactly the same as it always had. But sometimes life warns you quietly. Not with loud events. Not with dramatic scenes. Sometimes the warning arrives as a feeling. A subtle shift in the air. A quiet whisper in your instincts. And that whisper kept repeating the same thought over and over again. Something is wrong. At first I couldn't identify what it was. There was no obvious problem. Nothing I could point to. But the feeling wouldn't go away. It sat in my chest like a small stone. Heavy. Persistent. Impossible to ignore. The walls of the house seemed almost aware. As if they too were waiting for something to happen. Waiting for the moment when the quiet would finally break. Lately, I had started noticing small changes in him. The kind of changes that are easy to dismiss at first. Tiny things. Almost meaningless on their own. But when enough of them begin to appear, they start forming a pattern. His laughter didn't come as easily anymore. He still laughs sometimes, but it ended quicker. His smiles had become shorter. More controlled. Almost rehearsed. And then there was his phone. Before he used to leave it everywhere. On the kitchen counter. Between couch cushions. Sometimes even forgotten in the car overnight. But recently, it never left his hand. Not for a second. I would catch him staring down at the screen, his thumb moving slowly across it. Typing messages with quiet precision. His face would remain carefully neutral. Unreadable. And every now and then, just for a split second, a smile would appear. A private smile. A smile that wasn't meant for me. But the moment our eyes met, that smile would vanish. Replaced instantly by calm. Too calm. The kind of calm people wear when they're trying to hide something. Whenever I asked what he was doing, the answer was always the same. I'm just checking something for work. The exact same words. Delivered the exact same way. And trust, real trust, has a strange effect on us. It makes us believe explanations even when doubt begins quietly knocking on the door of our thoughts. So at first, I believed him. Of course I did. That's what love does. It chooses belief. But the small details kept stacking up. Late-night messages lighting the phone screen in the dark. Conversations stopping the moment I walked into a room. A kind of restless energy surrounding him. Like static electricity in the air. And when love starts to feel uncertain, silence becomes unbearable. Every pause feels like a secret waiting to be revealed. That night, as I sat there staring toward the soft kitchen light spilling across the hallway floor, I felt it. A shift. Something inside me knew. I wasn't imagining things anymore. The house itself felt heavier. Like it was carrying truths it hadn't spoken yet. Then I heard it. A sound. Very faint. Coming from upstairs. At first I told myself it was nothing. Old houses make noises. Pipes move. Wood expands. The wind brushes against windows. But the sound came again. Slow. Measured. Deliberate. Each repetition echoed through the silence like a distant heartbeat. My breath caught. The tea in my hands had gone completely cold. Something was wrong. I stood slowly and turned toward the hallway. The shadows stretching across the floor looked unfamiliar now. Twisted. Long. And then I saw something that made my pulse spike instantly. Liam's bedroom door. It was slightly open. Just a few inches. But that was enough. Because Liam never left his door open. Not even a little. Privacy was something he guarded carefully, like a small fortress. His door was always closed. Always. But tonight, it wasn't. And that tiny gap in the door suddenly felt like the most important detail in the world. A chill moved down my spine. My heartbeat echoed loudly in my ears. For a moment I stood completely still. It felt like the house itself was watching me, waiting to see what I would do next. Don't go upstairs. That was the first thought that appeared in my mind. Respect his space. Everyone deserves privacy. But another voice quickly answered back. A quieter voice. More persistent. Go look. Every step toward the staircase felt heavier than the last. The air itself seemed thicker. Pressing against my chest. My fingers trembled slightly as they touched the stair railing. Somewhere deep down, I already knew something. I didn't know exactly what. But I knew this moment mattered. Because sometimes in life, before you see the truth, you can feel it. And the truth was waiting upstairs, behind a door that was never supposed to be open. And that's where tonight's story leaves us. A quiet reminder that sometimes the smallest moments reveal the biggest truths. If this story stayed with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next story.